There are Asian countries where foreigners can own land on a freehold basis. These, however, are few and far between, and the list, well, it's probably not going to change anytime soon. That's because this remains a hot button issue that most sitting governments simply don't want to touch. Look no further than Thailand for proof of that. In 2022, the government approved a plan that would allow foreigners to own freehold property in the kingdom. Despite the regulations being attached to significant caveats, including a very high investment requirement, the public fiercely and vocally disapproved of the new measure. The proposal was actually shelved a few weeks after being approved, and the topic has not been revisited since. The Asian countries that do allow foreigners to own land are ones that have highly regulated real estate markets as well as economies that support overseas investment. And, as it happens to be, land tends to be more expensive here than in developing countries. So what Asian countries do permit foreign freehold ownership of land? Well, here are the 5 places it's possible. Before we get to that, let's mention that this video is being brought to you by AsiaLandForSale.com. If you're looking for land in Thailand, the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, or anywhere else in the region, be sure to visit AsiaLandForSale.com. We start in Japan, where all types of property are available on a freehold basis to owners. That even includes land and skyscrapers if you're so inclined. Your name will even be shown on the title deed, which is an added benefit. It must be noted that the government has put in place a few restrictions on individuals from purchasing plots located near nuclear power plants, security facilities, and other areas deemed by the government to be sensitive. That being said, owning land or any type of property in Japan does not come with any other benefits such as a visa, which means you'll need to have a reason to be in the country to stay there long term. That's kind of a bummer. In reality, these liberal land ownership and property ownership laws in Japan benefit companies operating there the most. Not only does it spare them from issues brought about by renting, but having a physical connection in Japan can show clients that you're really committed to the local market. Next up is South Korea, where it has been more than 20 years since the government opened up the property market and allowed foreign freehold ownership. These days, non-residents can acquire houses, apartments, really anything, including land, making it one of the most open in all of Asia. There is one thing overseas buyers may not purchase in South Korea. That is land in military installation reservations, cultural property protection zones, or ecosystem reservation districts. Beyond that, South Korea is similar to Japan in that owning land or any other type of property, well, it doesn't really come with any extra benefits. The story is different on Jeju Island. The tourist destination off the southern coast of the Korean peninsula was designated a special administrative region, with the government providing an investor residence permit for anyone who purchases more than $400,000 worth of real estate. This has seen an influx of foreign buyers, particularly from China, who are scooping up plots and other businesses and operating them there. Foreigners are able to own land on a freehold basis in Malaysia, although as you would expect, there are a number of rules and regulations in place, all of which are laid out in the National Land Code. For starters, Malay reserved land and land allocated for special affordable housing projects are off limits to foreigners. Additionally, all land transactions involving an individual who was born outside of Malaysia must receive approval from the state. This is necessary before you will be able to acquire the land title. Other foreign land ownership restrictions in Malaysia vary by state, with these mostly affecting things including the price floor and price ceiling, as well as usage. Beyond that, agricultural land in Malaysia is off limits to foreigners, although you may be able to acquire it on a leasehold basis in certain select parts of the country. Interestingly, land for sale in Malaysia may be transferred to a foreign trustee or beneficiary, which is important in terms of moving on from the plot in the future. Foreigners may own land on a freehold basis in Taiwan, assuming you happen to be a natural-born citizen of a country on its reciprocal ownership list. This list is somewhat quirky if we're being honest. Case in point, residents of only 42 US states are eligible to own freehold real estate in Taiwan. Similarly to Japan and South Korea, land ownership is arguably more practical for businesses since, like those other countries, there are no benefits provided to ownership. There are a few articles out there claiming it is possible for a foreigner to own a residential landed property in Singapore, but if we're being completely honest, that really is not the case. The government has set a really high price floor and must approve any such acquisition, which essentially means this is only available for well-connected individuals. In other words, stick to a condominium. On the other hand, a non-resident is permitted to purchase, hold, or dispose of a commercial or industrial property in Singapore. This includes things such as offices, retail spaces, malls, and any hotel that happens to be registered under Singapore's Hotels Act of 1954. While these 5 Asian countries do permit foreign freehold ownership of land, that does not necessarily mean doors are closed elsewhere. Instead, you must be willing to accept an alternative ownership structure, such as a purchase through an LLC or even leasehold. It is important you weigh the pros and cons of this before making any decision to buy. It is absolutely important to weigh the pros and cons of this before you make any decision to purchase land in Asia. If you have your heart set on a certain location or need to be there for business reasons, then you should definitely try to make it work in that country. On the other hand, if you value transparency and like the security of having that land title in your own name, well, then you're going to want to consider the 5 countries we mentioned in this video. And if you happen to be looking for land in Asia, visit asialandforsale.com. You'll find lots of available plots in Thailand, the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, and everywhere else in the region. That is asialandforsale.com. That does it for me. I'm Cheyenne Hollis. This is Interesting Asia, and as always, make sure you keep it interesting.